What's going on? This is the Dice Tower Daily Chat, and I'm Roy Canaday, and I'm here today with Sam from Gamelyn Games. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much, Roy. What's going on with you?
You know, just hanging out here, just trying to have a positive, good time. And I haven't done one of these daily chats in a little bit, so it'll be cool to come back in and talk with different people and people making fun of me for being in a closet or not being in a closet. I used to stream these from my closet over there in the other. So people are always tiny epic closets. Okay, so Gator Dave's always making fun. So Sam works with Gamelyn Games. If you'd like to tell everybody what you do over there at Gamelyn, and kind of what your role is.
Yeah, so we at Gamelyn Games are still a very small team. There's really only 3 of us that are working. It's myself, Michael Cohen, Nathan Hatfield. My official title is the Customer Engagement Director. Basically what that encompasses is I oversee all of our customer service. I take care of all of our social media. But because we are all such a small team, I am also heavily involved in game development. So, you know, the games that we've been putting out the past couple of years, I've been heavily involved in those. You can see my name under the developer on the box. And I mean, when you're such a small company, the list of what you actually do is very, very long, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I have been known from time to time to enjoy a Gamelyn game or two. You guys may publish one of my favorite games of all time. So
I don't know what that would be.
We were talking about before we got on here that like every single time somebody posts pictures of Heroes of Lander Sea or asks if Hero of Lander Sea is good, they don't tag Gamelyn Games. No, they tag me and they're like, ask Roy. I don't know, it's a lot of fun.
You've become the face of Heroes of Lander Sea. Like it just
not
I don't
Scott.
know. Not Scott. No, Scott's not the face of it. You are the face of Heroes of Lander Sea. Sure, Scott designed the thing, but when people think of Heroes of Lander Sea, they're like, yeah, Roy really likes that.
It's kind of funny because whenever people are like, hey, could you teach this game, or how well are you able to teach this game? I'm like, well, one time I walked by the Gamelyn Games booth, and I think it was either you or Nate, like yelled out like, hey, that's the guy that loves Heroes of Lander Sea more than anybody else. And I'm like, the publisher shouldn't be saying that. Like,
well, the thing is that it wasn't just that occurrence, because I remember that was at Origins.
Yeah.
And I stopped you several times at Origins as people were like, well, I don't know if I should get it. I'm like, ask this guy. He'll tell you that you should get it. Because I honestly think you can sell it better than any of us.
I just really enjoy like 4X games. I just really enjoy the whole like building up your resources and gathering your troops and just being able to follow actions and then being able to use the things that you've built up to take out your opponents sometimes. So it's good stuff.
As you have been known to do.
But yeah, we were also talking about how we normally have like a big Heroes of Lander Sea game at Gen Con, and we're going to have to take that remote this year. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Yeah, if we can make it a whole live streaming thing and have, you know, even the community join us, that'd be even better. We'll see if we can make that work.
Well, chat, let us know if you guys have any questions about Gamelyn Games or about Tiny Epic Games or Kickstarter-y type stuff or how you fit so much game in a tiny little package. Make sure to hit us up. I haven't had a chance to play Pirates yet. I'm excited to see what all that brings to the table.
You haven't tried Pirates? It's really fun. This is just my prototype copy that I have here at home.
Is it an empty box, or is that just the lid?
Oh no, it is chock full of prototype bits. But it's you know, a prototype copy that I use for doing a lot of solo mode development and stuff just at my house.
I remember when I interviewed Michael back in the day, like the first time, it was several years ago, but he used to say how you always have to like weigh every single component and every little thing you put in the box, because just a tiny little weight difference when you're talking about such a small game can change the shipping dramatically, you know?
Oh, it absolutely can. And that's something that it's kind of funny, just talking specifically about Pirates, you know, as Mike and I were going through on the development process, it was starting to hum, like it was playing really well. And then we both kind of stopped and we're at the table like, is this going to fit in the box? Like, I guess up to that point, we just hadn't necessarily considered because, as you go through, for a lot of people to kind of pull behind the curtains a little bit, as you are making a game, as you're developing a game, components will sometimes be added in, sometimes components will be taken away. And so what the game has in development may change. And so we had added some things, taken away, and we ran to the other side of the office and we're like stuffing everything in the box. Like, can we make it fit? And then weighing it and saying, okay, what is this, weight going to be? And had to make some adjustments, but ultimately we made it work. So Pirates is going to fit in the box and be in the right weight requirement. We try very hard to make that a thing.
So Gator Dave asks, when did you know you had a winner with the Tiny Epic formula?
So Tiny Epic was initially brought to life by Michael Coe, who is the CEO of Gamelyn Games. And so Tiny Epic is really his baby. I joined the team a couple of years ago, so Tiny Epic existed before my time at Gamelyn Games. But I know that, so Mike started with Tiny Epic Kingdoms. That was the first Kickstarter that was on, and I think Tiny Epic Kingdoms did like $16,000 or something like that, which at the time was great. That was still in the early days of Kickstarter, and it was a small game with a small price point, and so that was really successful. And as Mike continued to do more games in that Tiny Epic format and built the customer base, really the fan base. I guess customer base isn't the right word. The fan base. I think when Tiny Epic Galaxies went up on Kickstarter and blew everything away and did something along the lines of like $400,000, I think that's when Mike realized, like, this is something, and it's proven to be. And Mike, credit of everything goes to him. He's built the team around him, and he's comes up with a lot of what we do. And then you look at Pirates, and we just did $1.1 million with Pirates for a Tiny Epic game on Kickstarter. I mean, that's pretty big. So it's hard for me to pinpoint where that happened, but if I were to say anything, it's probably with Tiny Epic Galaxies.
Yeah, I feel like the entire Gamelyn brand is just about like how big of a game can we fit in this tiny little box,
Yeah. It's funny, as each game comes out, the space that is available, it just continues to shrink. We just continue to press the boundaries of what can actually be put into a tiny box. People, when they unbox Pirates and they set it up, it's going to be shocking to them, like, holy cow, this game is big. Like, it's, someone else walking by the table is going to look at the box that I showed you and be like, there's no way that game fits in that box.
Gamelyn Games is doing research into quantum mechanics to figure out how to align the atoms properly to be able to fit each component inside of a box.
Yeah, and surprisingly, I actually have, and I didn't pack it perfectly, but I actually have the expansion, the Curse of Andiak expansion, in this box as well.
Holy smokes. Yeah, I've tried to do that with several of my Tiny Epic games. Be like, shove the expansion in with the base game. It's fun. Gator Dave also asks, what was the genesis of the box size, like specifically the dimensions of it?
That was a little bit before my time, so it's hard for me to answer that specific question. I know for us, at least now, and I don't know if that was the initial concept or not, we can ship a Tiny Epic game in a bubble mailer. And as long as we keep it under £1, we keep, shipping rates reasonable for our Kickstarter backers. And it helps maintain kind of the Tiny Epic, because if you got a Tiny Epic and then you had to pay $15 in shipping, it's like, oh man, you don't want to do that. And so I know at least the dimensions now help us keep it for very reasonable shipping for our customers. And it's now consistent. It's the box size. It's just now it's the Tiny Epic box size, and we can't deviate from that.
Schick says, Roy is a great salesman for Heroes. My brother really loves the Heroes game, and I haven't played it yet. Get your life in order. Now, I'm not actually trying to sell Heroes at all. I just enjoy playing the game, and I guess if more people have heroes, I have more people to play the game with. And then Sam is happier because he has a job. I don't know.
I do enjoy having a job, but I also love heroes. I mean, as you can see by the game wall behind me, I am a gamer first. I mean, you can't see it, but I'm propping my laptop up right now on Glenmore 2 Chronicles. So I'm propping my laptop up on a game. Right behind my laptop is set up my favorite game of all time that I've been playing on and off all day. Like, primarily, I am a board gamer first, and then it's like I'm also lucky enough to be able to work in the industry, and I want other people to enjoy the games. And that's what it boils down. I know that's what you're about, and that's what I'm about. I love Heroes as well. I love playing Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Mostly, I don't really get to play those like high level games of Heroes much because I'm normally always teaching new people or people that like don't know mechanics, so I don't get to throw in all the stuff. The last game we played at Gen Con, we put like everything in there, like everything you could possibly do. And Michael was even running the app with all the events each round, and it was crazy, and it was a lot. It's always a lot of fun when it's like, okay, I'm gonna take the kid gloves off. Let's actually play this game.
Speaking of taking the kids' gloves off and that game, I'm going to give you a small chance to brag and tell everybody what you did with a ship and a certain amount of heroes.
So I actually had never played with that ship. So there's what is it? In the Pestilence, there's a promo. It's a booster pack ship that can actually hold 3 people. So it like doesn't have much attack at all, but it has like a really good special ability of like giving you like a wild resource or something while there's a unit in it or something like that. I'm like, that seems really cool. It can hold 3 people. I ended up getting that ship early, getting resources off of it, but then I filled it up with 3 different heroes at the same time. And I don't remember how much damage I actually did with it.
Gamelyn. One of which was the mercenary Gamelyn.
Right. So I had Gamelyn in the front and then all these other characters in there too. And it was basically probably like the highest strength thing I've ever seen, like in one space,
I've never seen that much attack.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the exact amount of damage was, but I've never seen it. And you came down and you attacked Michael and you beat him down.
Yeah, but I also had to use it to kind of, because I was kind of like in the lead, so I kind of had to use it to just be like, this is a threat. Leave me alone, because Michael was over there doing math. I felt like he was pulling out the calculator in his head, and he's just like, how do I beat Roy? And we got like, what was it, like just a couple points difference at the end of the game?
I think it was a tie. And it came down to resources.
A tie and it came down to resources? Yeah, I think you're right.
If I remember right.
He thought he was going to win because he thought his tower was further away than it actually was. So, publisher of the game, he's like, okay, my tower is here. I'm like, but if you take this path, it's like 2 shorter. And he's like, oh, I should get a couple resources back for that. And, that's 2 less points. Okay, we're tied. Who has the most resources? Roy. Yeah. But I always enjoy those games. People keep forgetting to not let me win them. But, like, the first year I won, and it was really close, and I ended up beating Scott and Michael. But then the second year, they're like, nah. And they just wrecked me off the board, which I'm pretty sure will happen next time we play as well. But it's always fun. Like, win or lose, I don't care. Still getting to have a good time.
I remember that game. I had fun. I was a Linekin. I was close in points to you guys, but I took that
Linekin are so good.
The Gladiator, and I just wreaked havoc on which was it, Tom or Wes? I think it was Wes from Neverboard Gaming. I think I just wreaked havoc on his land with the Gladiator.
Kabuki Kid asks, any plans to make a bigger version of Tiny Epic Galaxies?
A bigger version of Tiny Epic Galaxies. I will say it is something that we have talked about. I don't have anything that I can like announce or anything, but it is something that would be cool if we could do, if we were to do something like that. Well, we've got a lot of ideas if that were to be a thing. I don't have anything I can announce yet, but I will say we have talked about it.
And then Mr. Dreadful says, so just Epic Galaxies, ?
Exactly, yeah. I'd be like, okay, so if it's bigger, then it's not really tiny, and but yeah, we've had some ideas for it, and we've talked over like what we could do and what different things we could bring to Tiny Epic Galaxies if we were to. make it larger. So definitely has been in discussion.
David Drake says Tiny Epic Dinos is supposed to show up within the next week or so. I guess they're excited about their copy. Oh snap! Oh, and that one's fresh.
Yeah,
Tiny Epic Dinos.
This is my in shrink copy. So I haven't even opened my personal copy yet. But yes, we got Tiny Epic Dinosaurs is now at Fun Again's warehouse in Indianapolis, or Fort Wayne, or wherever their warehouse is, and we'll be shipping out probably on Monday. Start delivering to U.S. backers, and our international shipment is scheduled to arrive later on in like in a week or two in the UK, and then the rest of the world will start fulfilling at that time. So we're going to get all the packages out in July.
Matt says, any thoughts on what themes may be hot going forward? I think this is like a fishing question.
As in, like, what themes might he say that could be a new Tiny Epic?
So you would just say completely off the wall things.
Actually, I had an idea that I was going to, before we announced the name of Pirates, I was just going to throw up like a word cloud just with tons of different possibilities. And some may be stuff that we had discussed. Some may be stuff that I just, thought of in the moment. I didn't end up doing that, but I may in the future. But we are always talking about new themes to go into Tiny Epic. We tend to keep those pretty tight-lipped.
Tiny Epic Mutants, Tiny Epic Superheroes, Tiny Epic Apocalypse? I don't know.
I can't wait till we make a TEA game. So I'd be like, all right, let's just go have some tea.
Nice. What game was it that got you into the modern board gaming hobby?
Well, for me, so I've played board games and card games ever since I was a kid, growing up. But if we're going to talk about actual modern board gaming, with my family, I played Catan and things like that. But what really sprung me into the hobby was two games, Night of the Living Dead by Flying Frog and Ascension.
Oh, nice.
Those were really the two games that I started playing in 2010. And that's when I started collecting. My first game that I bought as like a hobby game for myself was Night of the Living Dead. Got all the expansions for it and everything, and then also Ascension. And it's grown from there to, you can see one half of one of my four walls in my game room.
That's awesome. Gator Dave says, looking at my shelf, zombies, Western, mechs, and tactics. I'm going to add on to this. I know they're all your children since you guys work so close to these games. What would you say is your favorite Tiny Epic game?
So for a long time, it was Western. I love the
bullet dice.
I love the bullet dice. I love the poker aspect to it. I love worker placement games. Like, it's definitely the heaviest of the Tiny Epic series, as far as rules and thinkiness and math goes. But I really loved it. I will say my new favorite is Tiny Epic Dinosaurs.
I haven't played it yet. I should have played it. I feel like you guys had a copy at Unplugged. So
I did. Yeah, I had a copy at Unplugged.
We got too distracted sitting at a restaurant and you never getting your food. So.
Oh yeah, that was a
nightmare.
That was a night. Holy cow. That was we were with the whole Dice Tower crew and then the people from Above Board TV.
Yeah, it was good times. Food.
Yeah, great people. Not so much.
I think for me, I'm still gonna have to go with Tiny Epic Quest. For some reason, I just really enjoy like the press your luck and the movement, and I don't know. I'm a huge fan of like that sort of theme, so it's really cool to like run around and collect all the magical items and stuff like that. I just really enjoy it. There needs to be more Quest.
Well, that's Quest is actually, even though it's not the most popular game of ours, it's definitely one of the more popular ones. I would say the Quest has been asked for an expansion more than any other game, even more than Zombies. people just continually ask for whenever we, post about what's the new Tiny Epic, what do you think? A ton of people ask for a quest expansion. So you're not alone in that.
Yeah, I mean that was the first one with the item meeples too. So like when they first came out, I feel like those were like, oh, holy smokes! And I was actually one of the first times I ever played Quest. I was sitting at a table with Mark Street and Emerson, and we were playing through Quest. And Emerson's like, oh man, the little item meeples, like the items work really good. I'm like, yeah, they're amazing. It's so cool how they do in there. He's like, I like molded those, right? Or I like designed those. I'm like, what? My mind was blown.
Yeah, for people that don't know, you're talking about Emerson Matsuchi, who is a game designer in his own right.
Right.
He designed the robot game. What's the robot game?
Volt, he did. Volt. Spectre Ops, he did. Century. He's done all those games, but he also does 3D modeling for item meeples.
Yes, and he actually he did the ships in Tiny Epic Pirates.
Oh, sweet. So he did the ghost ship too?
Yep. Yeah, Emerson did the ghost ship.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see how all that comes together.
It's going to be great. We're still getting like samples back from the factory, and we're expecting a shipment of the latest round of ship samples next week, which we're excited to see.
Let's see. What is your favorite non-Gamelyn game of all time?
It's sitting in front of me, but I don't think I have the box without leaving camera.
Oh, nice.
So, Lord of the Rings, the living card game.
So are you current with the Lord of the Rings living card game? Like, are you play like all of the stuff that they're still coming out with?
Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
It's technically on pause, maybe done at this point, but I have, minus the Nightmare decks, which I don't care for, I have basically everything for the game.
That's awesome.
And like you can't really see it, but I've got a full section of shelf devoted over there to it, 2 full sections of shelf over there, and then 2 other full sections of shelf directly in front of me that are all Lord of the Rings living card game, and it's set up on my game table right now.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is definitely my favorite IP of all times. That's awesome that you like stuck with the card game that long. I had like the first set, and then like I had like the first 2 cycles, but like I couldn't keep up. It always happens with those living card games.
It's expensive. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings IP is also my favorite IP. In fact, the new expansion to Journeys in Middle-earth is in my mailbox. I have not gone and picked up my mail today, but it's currently sitting in my mailbox, probably melting because it's so hot outside.
Yeah, I need to pick that up myself. So do you majority play solo, or do you play with other people, or?
Well, right now it's majority solo. But no, I usually play with other people. I also play a lot of solo games, but I host at least one game night at my house per week. I have a couple of regular monthly game nights that I'll go to, and then the odds are end game night that happens.
So you have a Lord of the Rings card game?
No, that one is actually almost exclusively solo.
Gotcha.
Because usually I just kind of I bang it out quickly, and I'll go through, I'll build decks. Usually I put in a couple of hours to build some decks, and then I just dive in and go through an adventure cycle. And
that's awesome.
Like today I've just been playing a ton. So
every time I love to dive into one of these living card games or a collectible card game or something like that, and then I never can keep up with it. Like Marvel Champions, I'm like, I am going to keep up with this game. Like, if it kills me, I'm going to keep trying to get all the stuff. I'm going to try to not fall off. But I'm currently okay, so we'll see.
That's one that I've played, and it's on my shelf. Oh, it's down. It's down there. I really enjoy it, and it is very similar to Lord of the Rings LCG, but I have not kept up with it, and I think probably because if I want that itch to be scratched, I'll probably play Lord of the Rings.
Right. I mean, how many of these lifestyle games can you really keep up with at the same time? It's hard. I mean, I did collectible card games for a long time, and that's one of the reasons that I went to board games, because there wasn't a meta to keep up with or things rotating out or anything crazy like that. You can teach a board game to anybody, and you can all play together. Like, if somebody wanted to play Lord of the Rings living card game on your level, they'd have to try for a long time, right? Because you played it so much.
It is my number one played game of all time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. Lots of people are saying what their favorite Tiny Epic games are. People are saying they love Quest, they love Galaxies. Oh, they're saying we need a live game of Heroes soon. We were maybe talking about that a little bit before the show.
Yeah, we might be able to make that happen.
Kabuki Kid says mega Tiny Epic Galaxies. It's not just, you can't just take the tiny off. No, it needs to be mega. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Mega tiny epic.
Let's see. What's a good question here? Matt says Tiny Epic Mutants sounds brilliant. Great idea, Roy.
I've seen Tiny Epic Mutants suggested, and we're always open to suggestions.
What would you say is like the most suggested theme that people want to see into a Tiny Epic game? Do you have like a track or a poll that's happened somewhere, or just emails that you constantly get in all the time?
So I haven't officially kept track of the frequency of this suggestion. Pirates was highly suggested before we did Pirates. Dinosaurs is actually highly suggested. I will say the ones that are standing out that I've seen a lot of people suggest are like Tiny Epic, Vikings. I've seen Vikings suggested. I've seen Ninjas suggested. I've seen Railroads suggested. A lot of people calling for like Tiny Epic Dungeons. That's been one that people have asked for a long time. Like Tiny Epic Economy. I'm trying. There's tons and tons.
Somebody said Tiny Epic Stocks, and I just scrolled past real quick. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's been asked for. We get that's what like Tiny Epic Railroads. We've got some 18xx gamers that are Tiny Epic fans, and they want an 18xx Tiny Epic. And you never know, maybe they'll get it.
Speaking of all these different themes, Kabuki Kid asks, "What's your favorite game genre?"
For me, dungeon crawl. Yep. Besides Lord of the Rings LCG, my top played games are like Gloomhaven, Descent. Those kind of classic dungeon crawlers. I just love them. Those ones I love going in cooperatively with. I had specifically a friend that we'd go in and we would play Descent or Gloomhaven for hours and hours and hours. He'd come over on a Saturday at 9 a.m. and we'd play till 3 a.m. We'd break for pizza. But like I said, primarily I am a gamer first more than anything else.
Kabuki Kid says, any ideas to do Tiny Epic games with a licensed IP? Do you think a IP would ever happen for Tiny Epic stuff, or?
I think it's very possible. I think a lot of it would need to make sense. That we'd really have to, get Scott working on making the design make sense for the IP, because I see a lot of games in the marketplace that may have those intellectual properties, those licenses, and it feels like the game's just tacked on with that theme.
Right.
And those are ones that, it's like, oh, this is cool, but it doesn't feel that way. Like if if I'm going to play a Lord of the Rings game, I want to feel like I'm in Middle Earth.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't want to just be like, oh, well, we had this game designed, and this IP seems like it'd be cool, and just tack it on. And so it's something that we have thought about, and it just has to make sense, because we devote a lot of time to make sure that the Tiny Epics are really good base level games, like that their mechanics are sound, that they're fun to play. They're easy to get into, and so finding the right license and designing around it Is it possible? Yes, we'll see.
Tiny epic heroes of land, air, and sea. It's
It's
basically
called Tiny Epic Kingdoms.
I know. I was gonna say the same thing. It's like if you haven't tried Kingdoms yet, Kingdoms was the first Tiny Epic game I ever got. It was the first Tiny Epic game.
Yeah,
so I didn't get in on the Kickstarter, but it was at a friendly local game store, and I'm like, I didn't have a chance to get on the Kickstarter. This game is so affordable. I'm taking a chance. I'm gonna get this game, and it has like a very similar combat system to one of my favorite games of all time, Dune. I just love the whole like bidding combat, and I think that if there's people out there that haven't tried Kingdoms, it's actually solid. Like I really enjoyed it, especially when you add in the what was the expansion called? Like the
Heroes Call.
Heroes Call. It adds all these different heroes that you can get and then like retire and get more points that way. That's up there as one of my favorites, but I just love the tiny 4X feel to it. So maybe that's just
Oh no, I also love Kingdoms. That was also the first Tiny Epic game I ever played. That's kind of what got me hooked on the series.
Gator Dave says Tiny Epic Battlestar Galactica.
I wanted to make a joke, but I can't remember what it's called. Where do you send people? The locker or something like that. The
brig?
Air chute.
The brig or the airlock?
The brig.
Yeah. Nick says Tiny Epic Hobbits. Now, people are just making up Tiny Epic games now, so
that's common. That's a common occurrence. I can tell you, if Gamelyn Games somehow took the Lord of the Rings IP from Fantasy Flight, you'd never see me again because I'd just be designing and developing the best, coolest Lord of the Rings games that I could think of, and just be having the time of my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that IP so much. Have you played War of the Ring yet?
Yes, I have.
I recently had a chance to play the old collector's edition of War of the Ring that comes in like the giant wooden book. Jason, who's part of the channel, he has a copy of it, and I don't know if he's ever played it. It had a lot of dust on it when we went to go play it, but I got a chance to play it, and it was a lot of fun.
He has played it, and I only know this because like 3 days ago, someone was posting about collections, and I saw the old video that Tom made with Jason going through his game collection in his house, and he pulled that out and was showing that edition that he has, and he talked about how he had actually played with it.
I don't think he's touched it since that video, so no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Jason. Oh, here you go. Tiny Epic Dune. The spice must flow. The tiny epic spice cubes must flow.
You never know. Like I said, all options are on the table.
Well, depending on licensing and agreements and what does this even mean? Tiny epic bass? It's like music instrument? Ooh, tiny epic Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Can you imagine if we did item meeples that actually had like working skateboards?
I don't think it'd be that hard to do.
No, but you like design a little skate park and it fits within like the insert of the Tiny Epic game is the skate park.
That would be cool. Like you have like a little ramp inside the box.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I thought's really cool that Gamelyn's done, especially with like tactics. Like that was a whole different approach to 3D terrain. You guys have 3D buildings in Heroes, but in Tactics, like there's a whole 3D like terrain that you build for the Tactics game fit all inside a box. Like how was that? How did that come about, and how was working on fitting all of that stuff inside one little box?
So it came about through yearly. Gamelyn does what we call the Tiny Epic Retreat, where Scott comes down and the main graphic designer that we work with, Ben Schulman, comes down and we all get together as a Gamelyn team, and we rent a cabin for an extended weekend and just hammer out ideas and development and what really could Gamelyn do for the next year, and so we go in and hammer out a ton in that one weekend, and that's where Tactics really came about. And one of Michael's favorite video games growing up, was Final Fantasy Tactics. And so he wanted to make a game similar to that, and that's kind of where the birth of it came in. Fitting everything inside the box was a challenge, but Ben is a genius, and he made it work out. And as well as with the team working together, but it was fun to see it come together.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really enjoy how, I don't know, it's a very interesting game because you're always closer to opponents than you think because you can pop through those little portals and different holes and things like that. It's definitely interesting how everything plays out.
It's fun playing with people who have not played before, because if they're not paying attention to what those portals can do, they're looking and they're like, oh man, I'm so far away from everyone, I'm never going to be able to attack. And then, like, kind of just for fun, I'll slip somebody through a portal and be like, oh, by the way, I'm attacking your beast. And they're like, what? You were all the way over there? Like, yeah. See these portals? I told you about them. And they're like, oh, and then it, like, the light goes off, and they're like, oh, I can go anywhere. And then, like, the possibilities open up.
It's very similar to, like, the land bridges in Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Like, people don't realize how extremely close you are to each other. It's like you can basically get anywhere just by taking a few steps out your front door.
Yeah,
so it makes the game very interesting.
It's weird to think as you're kind of on the outskirts of your own continent that you start on, and then if you pay attention, look at it, you're like, oh shoot, I'm adjacent to that and that, where there are people. Oh, like I'm one space away. I'm closer to them than I am my capital city.
I keep getting stuck in games playing on top of the floating island, which I always play Heroes with the floating island at this point. But everybody always wants a piece of that floating island, so it's like it's hard to play up there because everybody's like, I could play on the normal ground. I'm gonna start down here, but then I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna build a tower, and it always ends up happening by somebody.
Well,
Everyone's a little bit of piece of that 3D action.
And very few people ever want to go to the sunken continent. They're like, no, I'm good. I don't want to go over there. I don't want to mess with those fish people. But let's go and talk
high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
So now they're asking for Tiny Epic Cthulhu. I'm sure that's been mentioned a ton.
That one, I forgot to mention, that is definitely one of the top ones that has been suggested. And that is an open license. So, or that it's like, it's one that it's so old that you don't have to gain rights to be able to make stuff with that. So that is very much within the realm of possibility.
For sure. Someone says, I'm late to the party for the Tiny Epic series. I have Quest and would love to get Galaxies. Any info on when it will be back in stock?
October.
Nice.
Yep. So you could actually go to the Crowdox for Tiny Epic Pirates right now, and you can pick up any of our games in the deluxe editions, which are basically, like, if you're unaware, they're like the Kickstarter editions of the game. We sell all of them on our website, but we also have them in the Crowdox that's open right now, and you can pre-order Tiny Epic Galaxies through there, as well as Tiny Epic Pirates and any other games that you would like.
I know you guys work like super close with manufacturing, since all this stuff has to fit in these boxes and be just right. I know they do like trips to China during previous years. How does that work out for you guys, or like what all have you learned, or how does that work with getting close and figuring out all the stuff for manufacturing?
Yeah, so we've had to cancel a couple of trips that we were going to take to China. We probably are going to be there in April. So the last time we went was in June of last year. Michael and I went to China for Tactics, because Tactics was a very complicated manufacturing job with all of those boxes, and the fact that excuse me, the interior printing. So we do interior printing on boxes, and more companies are starting to do that, as opposed to like, this does not have interior printing. It's just a box lid. That is just a prototype. But we do interior printing on this. And that's more expensive and slightly more complicated. But when you do it on something as big as that box, It's fine. When you start doing it on the much smaller boxes, it becomes much more complex. So we had that issue of complexity plus the scrolls. So the map scrolls that you actually lay down in Tactics. Mike and I spent probably a full day and a half of our trip in China going between two different factories, working on making sure that those scrolls not only were color matched properly, we had to test a bunch of things. Um, but also make sure that the way that it was sewn, so the edges were sewn, that it gave us the lowest failure rate and, made it so that they laid flat as much as possible, because we had to play around with how those things were sewn together, because some of them made the silk bunch up more. And so working on how to do that. It's a cool experience to go to a foreign country and go to China and work directly in the factories that our games are being made in, and having that oversight where we'll say, okay, we want to make this change to make this better. And they'll say, okay, well, give us a couple hours. Then a couple hours later, we'll come in like, all right, so we got this sample made up. How does this look? And it's just constantly evaluating. It's a lot easier. One of the main reasons we go is because it reduces time. Because where I told you we can be at the factory, they give us something, we're like, well, maybe adjust this, maybe adjust that. They can have that to us in a couple hours and we can reevaluate. Where we can't be there, what happens is they do that, then they mail it to us. And even when they send a priority mail, it's still 1 to 2 weeks from China. Yep. We look at it, say, okay, maybe change this. Then,
we recently had to do that with stuff from the Dice Tower Kickstarter as well, because we get stuff manufactured over there. It's like, oh, we got the Dice Tower cat plush, and it's like, oh, our cat doesn't have a tail. Like, it's that sort of thing. It's like, okay, well, now we got to get the tail added to the cat, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how many files go into making a board game. And even though you think like it's a file, it's very straightforward, somehow when you transfer the file to being printed on whether it be cards or cardboard or boxes, how something gets changed, and you're like, hold on. And so it's been a really cool experience to be able to go over to China and witness that and be a part of that. But it also serves a very important function in how we make the games even better.
Yeah, today I just watched a video of a lot of how like the sort of manufacturing of stuff like that works. It's super interesting. I don't think people realize how much has to go into a board game. Like one place will make like cardstock, and then other people will like put the card, like it's like all sorts of different places do different things. And I'm sure as a good publisher would do, you're trying to figure out the best way to make it cost effective, so that way you can make these games that are like not super expensive for the consumer on the consumer's end, and you can get it to America and ship it all out. It's always very interesting to see how all those pieces of the puzzle fit together.
Yeah, it's I certainly learned a lot. When I went over that, I could talk about that trip for hours and hours and hours of all of what I've learned and what goes into it. If people do want to check out Gamelyn Games Instagram, which is just at Gamelyn Games, I actually did a series of Instagram stories from that specific trip. So if you have about 10 minutes or so, you can just watch all the stories back to back. They're just under those, they're like the little bubbles, and it's called China Trip. But you can see where Michael and I visited the factory that made the scrolls. And
that was during Tactics, right?
Yep. Yeah. So you can kind of see that trip that I just talked about if you check out our Instagram stories and go to the China Trip under our main page, I guess.
Matt says, what sport would you like to design a board game on?
What sport? Well, my favorite sport is baseball. So I guess if I were personally to design a sports game, I'd probably want to do it about baseball, because that's my favorite sport. But I also really like football and basketball. Also, I did archery a lot, so maybe archery. I don't know.
I wonder how a board game about archery would work. That'd be very interesting.
That'd be pretty cool.
Now they're making fun of me because a moth was attacking me, and they're asking if that was Mr. Miyagi trying to catch a moth out of catch a fly out of the sky. They say, "Get the chopsticks, Roy." Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Matt says, Tiny Epic Vikings almost feels too obvious. Has it already been done?
Has it already been done? No, hasn't been done. We've discussed it. Definitely.
And then Mr. Dreadful says, curling? Question mark. Tiny epic brooms sweeping to let the little curling balls.
I don't see curling ever going into the Tiny Epic franchise. You never know. Never say never. But if anybody out there designs a board game around curling, I will buy it. Just for the sake of buying it, I will. I'll do it.
I think there are some sort of table games that have curling as a thing, because I know Eric Summerer, who's part of the Dice Tower podcast, he's a big part of the Dice Tower here. He loves the curling stuff. I know he has a couple curling-based board games. I'm not exactly sure how they work, though.
Well, I know, like, Crokinole has aspects of curling.
But it doesn't have little brooms, though. It needs little brooms.
It doesn't. Yeah, it does not have the brooms. No, it's the flicking the discs. But
do you like trivia games at all? Says Kabuki Kid.
I do. I very much enjoy trivia games.
I actually had the Lord of the Rings version of Trivial Pursuit. So that was the only trivia. I don't like trivia a whole lot, but I can wreck some people in Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit.
You know, Roy, I think it probably only for you and I, and not for anyone else, to play a game of Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit. My friends at a game night, now it feels like years ago, but it was probably in November, one game night was like, let's play Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit. And like my eyes lit up and they didn't know what they were in for. It was not close.
That's awesome. It's always strange when like you get a question, you're like, but is the question about the movies or the books? Because there's two things that happen. It's very different. It's like, I guess we're gonna. It's the movie version, so I guess we need to go the movie route. You know.
Well, usually they'll, at least in my version, they'll usually specify, but they do have questions in both to show you how big of a Lord of the Rings fan I am, and I hope that the video quality stays good enough. And I apologize, my room is a mess. Up there are Lord of the Rings action figures from the movies.
That's awesome. I actually think I have some of those, but mine are not in boxes.
Yeah, they're all in boxes. I actually got them at an antique fair that my wife made me go to.
That's awesome.
And then over here, you can't see them lined up against the wall, but I have Gandalf's sword, Strider's sword, and then in that back corner, I have Gandalf the White Staff, I have Anduril, I have...
I guess you win. You win, Sam.
I've got Roar's Key up there. I've got a couple of One Rings sitting around here. I've got a really cool poster by a piece of artwork from Lord of the Rings that was made by one of the main like Lord of the Rings artists. That's what John Howe. That was painted by him like in the 70s or something. It's beautiful. Got my Gondorian dice bag. Yeah, anyway, I'm a Lord of the Rings nut.
I'm coming to Arizona. Let's play some Lord of the Rings games. Let's do it. Let's bust out that. What is the Journeys in Middle Earth expansion you just got? Let's just play the whole campaign. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
I'm in. Let's play all 3 campaigns.
If only. If only. Let's see. William Garcia says, "My man Roy," and I say, "My man William Garcia. What's up, man?" Oh, it's fun.
I was supposed to give a shout out to my friend Mark. I don't know if he's watching or not, but he was giving me some crap earlier today and told me I need to give him a shout out. So Mark, if you're watching, here's your shout out. He's my friend that I played dungeon crawlers with for hours and hours and hours upon end.
That's awesome. Have you dabbled into any like remote gaming stuff much?
So I've done some games over Zoom, like since the pandemic has happened. I don't play on Tabletop Simulator or any of that kind of stuff. I just prefer the analog experience. But I've played Welcome 2. I've played Just One. I've played Fleet, the dice game. I've played Ink and Gold, which is now
nice.
Also used to be like Diamant, but it's now called something else.
Ink and Gold.
And, yeah, republished like 4 times. And those are... Oh, I played actually Too Many Bones with Board Game Coffee.
Oh, that's crazy.
It wasn't an official anything. It was just that we were chatting one day, and Mark from Board Game Coffee is a good friend of mine. And we were talking about Too Many Bones, and I told him how much I loved it. And I was like, I'll teach you how to play, because it's a little bit of a beast to learn how to play. And so he had it set up with him and his wife, Brittany. And I had it on my table, and we both had multiple camera setups. And then he was like, well, you just taught us to play. Do you want to play? I was like, sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we played Too Many Bones. It was a long time playing over Zoom, but it was really fun.
Yesterday was the first day I'd ever played Cloudspire. Cloudspire is pretty good. Have you tried that one yet?
I have. Yeah, I didn't play multiplayer. I only played solo.
Oh, gotcha.
It wasn't my cup of tea.
I just like games where you have resources and you buy units and you attack stuff with those units. That's my MO in games,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the production quality of it is insane. I mean, Chip Theory knocks it out of the park all the time, and Too Many Bones, actually, I think Too Many Bones is right there. I'm waiting for my Trove chest.
That's awesome.
That ridiculous Trove chest that they announced. I've got that coming whenever they get it to the U.S.
Yeah, I've started using Tabletop Simulator to try to put prototype stuff together, dabbling in game design, because it's hard to get things play tested properly when you're not able to see people as much,
Yeah, I have a design that I got ready right before COVID hit, and it was just getting to the point that I'm like, all right, I feel like this is in a good spot, and then, oh yeah, I don't get to see anyone.
I'm telling you, man, it's pretty easy to put stuff on Tabletop Simulator, and you can connect with people all over the world. Like, I played a prototype with a guy that was like complete opposite time in China. Played my prototype with him. It was pretty fun. So,
oh, nice.
They say Roy got out geeked. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of all your Lord of the Rings props. It's not even fair. Someday I'll be as Lord of the Rings fan as Sam. I've got new goals to aspire to.
It's not an easy task. It's taken a lot of years.
Matt says Sam's room 1, Roy's closet 0. Thanks guys.
Well, do you want to see something disgusting that should probably make my room lose? Are you going to see my unplayed wall?
You have an unplayed wall? Normally people have a shelf of shame, not a entire wall of shame.
That's my unplayed wall.
All right, chat. Let him know which game he should play first. I don't know. I couldn't see long enough.
Well, yeah, I didn't leave it on there. It's the window would block it. But to be fair, it just means that I haven't played it since it's entered my collection. I've actually played a lot of those games, but I leave them there until I've played it since owning it.
Gotcha. So you don't count playing other people's copies of games as a play for your games?
Unless I bought it and then played someone else's copy, then I'll pull it off. But it's for me to keep track of, like, okay, I bought this game. Have I actually played it since adding it to my collection? And so that's kind of where my system comes from. I've played a lot of those, but not since they enter my collection. I played them, liked them, bought them, and haven't played them since.
Yeah, Wall of Shame is pretty intense there, Sam. Wall of Shame.
Yeah. But I do play a lot of games. I also get a lot of games.
Do you find it as a publisher, since you have to spend a lot of time doing development and playtesting stuff, do you find it hard to play like other games or try to find the time for that, or?
No. I think that had I not been a board gamer for so long prior to becoming a publisher, I think it probably would wear me down, but I still have such a love for games. I will say sometimes, if we had heavy development sessions and I played 4 to 5 hours of board games for development purposes, at work, maybe I'll be more inclined to, instead of playing a solo game when I get home, watching some TV. That for sure will happen. But as far as like, scheduling game nights, getting people together, and still having an excitement of playing board games, I feel really fortunate that it has not diminished that. I know that for some people it has, and I hope not to get to that point because, as I've said many times before, just in this 45 minutes we've been talking, I am a board gamer first.
How important do you think as a publisher it is to play other publishers' designs or see what other things are going out there in the board gaming like industry?
For me, I think it's extremely important, because I like to see what other people are doing, and honestly, I like to be impressed by seeing like, wow, that's really cool that they did, and it's like, I almost think of it as like an ideation session where you come up with an idea and your idea was really good. And because you had that idea, it made me think of something else that maybe I would not have thought of without hearing your idea first. Even though they're completely unrelated, I needed to see what you did to accomplish this. And that's how I view it. So for me personally, as a publisher and a developer, I love seeing other people's games, and seeing how they did certain things, and like, wow, how can I do something similar to that, or even, improve upon it, or man, they did that. What if I did this, which is separate, but yeah, that's kind of how I.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how many like amazing great games are coming out like every single year. It's like, is this going to be the year when there's not anything great? Nope, hit after hit after hit. Like there's been so many games that have even come out this year so far that have just been a blast to play and so much fun. So it's always interesting to see. And we haven't even hit the time frame of Gen Con and Essen and stuff when new games are announced. So it'll be exciting to see where we end up.
Yeah, I have just right now on Kickstarter, I think I'm backing like 4 games that all look really cool. And then like, the AEG Dead Reckoning, talking of 4X games, like that looks amazing. There's the like Chronicles one or something like that. And then there's this solo Raha something. And then a new Kickstarter of a game that I have actually played is coming out from Smirk and Dagger, called The Night Cage.
Oh, nice.
And that one I played a little over a year ago, when I judged a game design competition at SaltCon, and they actually won, and I was part of the crew that judged it. And I'm really happy for Smirk and Dagger and Kurt over there that he was able to sign that game, because it's great.
That's awesome. Kabuki Kid asks, do you like hex and chit style war games, like old school war games?
Not overly so. I don't mind playing them every now and then, but it's definitely not my favorite type of game.
My dad has tons of war games and old school chit style war games. He actually had the old like Chit War of the Ring, like the old school TSR one or whatever, where you had like little chit stacks of units that would move across the board. It's completely different than the current War of the Ring game, but it was fun back in the day. But I need that production quality, man. I love games that look really good.
And game companies keep stepping it up. We do our best and we try to make everything great, and it just, I love seeing so many companies just upping the game, upping the ante on how nice you can make a board game.
Do you have any recommendations for a good negotiation game?
A good negotiation game?
Cosmic Encounter. Full stop.
There's definitely a lot of negotiation in that one. Yeah. I will say not necessarily. I would consider it negotiation, but in a little bit of a subverted way. It would be Ponzi Scheme. Have you ever played Ponzi Scheme?
I haven't played it, but yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's not open negotiation, but it's like almost secret trading where you're you're subvertly negotiating with whoever you choose to trade with. I'm not generally huge into negotiation, but that one is a good one. Also, Game of Thrones, the board game. It's not meant to be a negotiation game, but it absolutely becomes one.
Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is a negotiation game for me because it's like, please don't kill me, everybody. Please. I know I've played this game a million times, but just let me win one more time. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, do you have Lord of the Rings Confrontation? It's an underrated Lord of the Rings board game. That's the one that's sort of Stratego-like, I've heard.
Yeah, it is very Stratego-like. I have owned it. I do not currently own it.
Ah.
I always played Stratego growing up with my dad, and he always beat me. I've never won a game against him, and I think it kind of soured.
Oh no!
For me, and that may be the reason that I don't play it as much, and ended up getting rid of it. But I think that's a Kanichi title, isn't it? For the Fantasy Flight Kanichi title. It just wasn't the game for me. And I think probably because of my history with Stratego.
What's the next game on the docket to play from your Wall of Opportunity?
Ooh, that is a good question.
If you had a tier list, what would be at the top of it?
Well, if it has to change because it's basically I can only play solo games right now. And so I would say probably the next game for me to pull off and like, okay, I'm going to learn this. Sorry, you're getting a side view of my face because I'm having to look over there. Probably Hexplore It.
I'd actually heard good things about that.
Yeah, it's like a dungeon crawler type thing. I've pulled it out of Shrink. I've read part of the rule book. And I've just never played it, but that's probably going to be the next one that comes off of my shelf. My wife's going out of town for 2 weeks, starting on Monday, so I will have plenty of time for gaming.
I'm coming for that Lord of the Rings week. No, I'm just kidding.
Roy, you're welcome at my house anytime.
What are your thoughts on app integration in the hobby? Has there ever been a Tiny Epic game with an app kicked around?
So with app integration into a Tiny Epic game specifically, we actually have not talked about that. We've talked about apps overall and like what apps.
Because there is an app for Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. I don't know if people know this, but there's an actual app that shows everybody what all the different player boards have on them, and it also has events. But I really like the way you did events in it because it shows you the event like 2 turns in advance, so you can kind of prepare for it.
Yeah, it adds another aspect to the game of planning. So that is an example of app integration that's not necessary, but is really cool. And I think especially for new players, as they start to play, you can look at other people's heroes' abilities. You know, if you're like, oh, Roy's playing the bird folk like always. What do his heroes do? And you can look that up in the app, which is really nice for heroes. We haven't done it with Tiny Epic yet. As far as my personal thoughts and feelings, I like it. You know, I like the app integration in board games. Obviously, I don't want it for every game that I play, but, you know, Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth, I love the app integration of Descent. That's actually what made me get back into Descent, because I bought it when it first came out with the 2nd edition back in, I think, 2011. And I just am not a huge fan of the 1-be-all for my personal gaming preferences. And so when it came out with the app that made it cooperative, I bought everything for the game. I have a full shelf devoted to Descent 2nd edition because I have everything for it. So I'm a fan of it personally, and I think that it would be cool to see a Tiny Epic with that. Who knows?
Oh man, this entire chat has just been people saying different types of Tiny Epic games. Tiny Epic Kaiju, Tiny Epic Detective. It's like the whole time. It's just really funny.
I think Tiny Epic Kaiju could be cool. I really do think Tiny Epic Kaiju could be pretty awesome.
I that would be fun too. Let's see here. Question: what are your favorite Lord of the Rings characters? Do you have an all-time favorite character?
So it's probably 3. that would be for me. If I like love one character more than anything else, it's probably Gandalf. Um, I love Gandalf. I've just always been a fan of like wizards and I kind of grew up reading The Hobbit and reading Lord of the Rings, and then the movies came out in 2001, and Ian McKellen is just stellar. And so I really connect with that. I aspire to Gandalf, so probably Gandalf. But the other two are Aragorn and then actually Faramir.
Oh, nice.
And probably if not Gandalf, Faramir. Which a lot of people don't know this, but so J.R.R. Tolkien wrote himself and his wife in as Beren and Luthien in kind of Middle Earth lore, but he always wrote that he based the character Faramir after himself, more of like what he aspired to be, and he attributed a lot of characteristics that he saw in himself in Faramir, and Faramir is just so pure of heart, and such a great character, and so Gandalf or Faramir, one of those two.
Yeah, I'd have to say Aragorn, just because I don't know. I'm just a big fan of his whole story. I don't know.
Oh,
I think it's so basic, but but it's
He's
good
awesome.
stuff.
Yeah,
Man,
Aragorn's the third, and then fourth is Sam.
I wish Tom Bombadil was in more stuff. I love Tom Bombadil. That dude's crazy.
Ho, Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo.
It still makes me sad that he's not like in any sort of like director's cut or like additional scene or behind the scenes thing. No mention of Tom Bombadil in any of the movie stuff. So it always makes me happy when I see him in a game.
I think my biggest regret if Lord of the Rings: The Living Card Game is officially over, because they haven't said it's officially over. It's currently on pause, and who knows when it's going to come back. Is we did not get a Tom Bombadil hero.
Do they have allies for Tom Bombadil? Because I didn't get that far in.
There is one. He's like a card that can be shuffled into the encounter deck for like a one time. He pops out. Woohoo! Very thematic for Tom Bombadil. But I would have loved to have had a Tom Bombadil hero.
Yeah, he seems like as far as like an ally, it would work well if he had an ability like Gandalf, where he's only there for like a round, then he disappears, sort of thing. So, but yeah, good stuff. There to save you in the nick of time when you're being attacked by Barrow Wights.
My current decks that I'm playing, Gandalf is a hero.
That's awesome. So I am excited to see the Gandalf hero for the new Journeys in Middle Earth expansion too. I want to see how they mix it up, because that expansion has as much content as the base game has, which is insane. They ramped into the trying to figure out how to organize those tiles problem that a lot of those games have real quick. I was watching an unboxing of it, and somebody's just punching out tons and tons of tiles. I'm like, how am I gonna find any of these?
Oh yeah. Well, now I'm ticked at myself that I haven't gone there yet. So as soon as we're off on this live stream, I'm going to my mailbox and I'm getting my copy.
Have you seen the speaking of all those crazy tiles that you always had to organize, the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion kind of fixed that quite a bit by switching it to one of those storybooks where you play on the book itself.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I would love to see.
Haven't played with it yet because I can't buy it yet. Sold out. But brilliant. It's given me a lot of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, there were stuff that did that. A lot of Plaid Hat games had that with the whole storybook that Jerry Hawthorne did. Stuff Fables and
that's
several of their games. And they do that with a little worker placement in Forgotten Waters as well, where you have different pictures and then you can go different places on different ports and things like that. But I just think the idea of playing on a book that can flip out, I mean, you don't have much room for a book in a box this big, but but it's really cool stuff. Awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Now they're saying Tiny Epic Game of Thrones, Tiny Epic Diplomacy. Yeah, anyway. More things. Rainer says Sam.
Who says that?
Rainer from Board and Dice.
I love Rainer. I miss that
awesome.
Guy.
Rainer is crazy licorice.
He is a good guy. And Board and Dice is coming off with some amazing games. Well, they look amazing. I haven't played them yet, but they look amazing. Like Tekenyu and Tawanatsu or something like that.
I just played the one that has the obelisk or whatever where the shadow goes around. I'm not usually into like Euros that much, but I definitely had a fun time playing against Tom and Jason and being like, I'll show you how to win a Euro game. I don't know. It's fun. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I can definitely see why people that are into those like crunchy, heavy mechanics like crazy Euros would really enjoy those. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I've got them on pre-order, so they'll show up at some point.
Let's see. What? Kabuki Kid says, nah, Tom Bombadil doesn't work for a movie? How are you unimaginative? Like, what's going on? Like, we have crazy graphics. You could do anything. You think he's just too silly? I didn't think it was. I don't know. Maybe it's just nostalgia speaking.
I would have loved to have seen Tom Bombadil, but I can kind of get it because you're drawing in a lot of audience that is not going to understand like what Tom Bombadil is, and I could see it distracting.
No one knows what Tom Bombadil is. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I could see him distracting from the main story. I would love to have seen him. Absolutely would love to. I think Tom Bombadil's amazing. But I see why he was not put in the films. I just think
it's one of those things that adds like the mystery and wonder to the world of Middle Earth, where it's like, there's weird things going on that nobody in Middle Earth really quite understands. You know, it makes it kind of more whimsical. I think. I don't know.
Sure.
It's just me.
Well, I mean, Tom Bombadil is an incredibly powerful being, but he just doesn't care.
Are you excited for the? I think there's supposed to be like an Amazon Lord of the Rings series coming out.
Yes.
I hope it's good.
Yep. Whenever it does come out, I'll be excited for it. Even if it's mediocre, I'll probably love it because it's Lord of the Rings. Unfortunately, they had to stop shooting due to COVID, but they were shooting the first season.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's rough. What was your opinion of like the Lord of the Rings movies compared to like The Hobbit?
I don't even think that there's a comparison between the two.
Gotcha. Are you on the naysayer for the Hobbit stuff?
The first movie was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was. The first movie was good. The second movie was like didn't quite hit the mark for me. The third movie, I don't even want to talk about the third movie.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just so crazy to me. Like, how can you have the franchise and like it's written down in a book? Just follow the book. You know, I don't know. But I mean, it was interesting, and there's actually a guy who went and made like the Tolkien cut, and I watched it, and I feel like it cuts out a lot of the stuff that's not in the book, and then tries to make it center more around like Bilbo himself, and like I thought it was great, and I'm like, man, I wish I could just get the Tolkien cut on DVD, which makes it a lot shorter, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I probably went into the Hobbit series with really high expectations because of how well done Lord of the Rings was.
And I mean, it's still the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I say, is my favorite movie, even though it's 3 movies. It's my favorite movie of all time. So watching The Hobbit, my expectations were here, you know?
Yeah. And that's probably why I was let down more. I mean, there's the whole story behind, you know, the rushed and Peter Jackson coming in last minute and not having the time and all that kind of jazz. But I will say, while my wife is gone for the next 2 weeks, I will be rewatching the trilogy. That's definitely going to happen. But also, if you have not done so yet, you should go on to Josh Gad has a YouTube show, and he got on the majority of the cast of Lord of the Rings, and they did like an hour-long Zoom call. And
yeah, I watched that. That was awesome. Where they're quoting different lines.
Yep. And like I teared up a little bit when he mentioned Ian Holm and said that Ian Holm couldn't be there, but then read a note from him, and I watched it like the day after Ian Holm had passed away. And so, like, as they were all giving their love to Ian Holm and he was talking about it, I was like, Bilbo.
Yeah, that is rough.
It was sad.
But yeah, I definitely enjoy it. Have you read the Silmarillion stuff?
I have read some of it. I feel like I start reading and then I get distracted and then I'll like pick it up at a later time
It's
and
so
read some
hard.
more. It's dense. It's not as bad as Treebeard's poetry, but it's pretty dense.
I've tried to read it multiple times and then I just succumb and like listen to an audiobook of it because it was so much easier for me to hear someone else say the names. Because I mean, in Lord of the Rings, there's crazy names, but you see the same names over and over again. In the Silmarillion, it's like crazy name, crazy name, crazy. It's just constantly all these names that are really hard to pronounce. So it's just like, oh my goodness, what's going on?
There's a pretty hilarious internet quiz that is this a Tolkien name or an antidepressant?
Sounds about right.
And it is a lot harder than you think. I feel fairly knowledgeable about Lord of the Rings. Right? I mean, I'm not the most knowledgeable out there or anything, but I feel pretty knowledgeable, and it was a lot harder than I.
Are you into the Lord of the Rings cartoons? The guy was basically raised on the Hobbit cartoon and the Lord of the Rings cartoons and Return of the King.
I never watched them.
You should watch the Hobbit cartoon. I'm not joking. Like, it's good.
I've heard people talk about it, but I was never exposed to it and
Wow.
have never like sought it out.
I figured you were gonna be like, yeah, of course, man. I almost want to like go on Amazon and send you the DVD of the Hobbit cartoon so you can watch that first before you watch the rest of the Lord of the Rings stuff because it's great.
I do it. I'd totally watch it.
It's good stuff. So, but yeah, I definitely when I was a kid, like there were kids out there that would run around pretending to be Power Rangers or Super Mario or whatever. Me and my friends ran around pretending to be Lord of the Rings characters. And I very specifically remember a day where it's like, okay, I'm Aragorn, you're Frodo, you're Sam, and we had so many kids that wanted to play with us. And I started having to give out the lesser known characters. I'm like, you're Gollum. And he's like, who's Gollum? I'm like, don't worry about it. He's like, is that frog guy? I'm like, don't worry about it, man. Because all we had seen was the cartoon. This was before the movies had come out. But yeah, I those stories like that are how I have to bring my Lord of the Rings nerd cred back up when you show all your staffs and swords and figures everywhere.
I will say that I definitely, as a kid, didn't walk around my neighborhood in a bathrobe with a walking stick saying that you shall not pass. So,
oh, we definitely had sticks as swords and
definitely
pretended like the trees were orcs and stuff, So. hiding in ditches, trying to stay away from the Nazgul. You know how it is.
Oh yeah. Oh, I am very familiar with how that is.
Yeah. Kabuki Kid says the Lord of the Rings animated movies had their own charm too. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I definitely have a lot of that. Awesome. Well, it looks like we're pretty much past our time. If people are interested in learning more about Gamelyn Games or where they can find stuff from Gamelyn Games or the next Tiny Epic stuff, where should they look?
www.gamelyngames.com. But also follow us on social media. We've got Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, all of them, Gamelyn Games.
Awesome. Well,
that's the best place to find us.
Thanks so much for joining me, Sam. I'm super excited to see what you guys have it coming up next. And thanks everybody for joining us on this daily chat. It's definitely been a ton of fun. It got pretty deep in Lord of the Rings nerddom, which I love. But hopefully you all have enjoyed it. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for having me on. See y'all.
Bye.